All right, so we'll move on to the losers now from a fantasy perspective. Now, there's a few that we're going to bunch in together here, but first of all, I've got Terry Rozier, Devonte Graham, and basically the entire Hornets roster. Now that they've drafted LaMelo Ball and they've acquired Gordon Hayward, I think especially those guards, and also I'll mention Miles Bridges are probably the three that will take the biggest hit. I still have a little bit of faith in PJ Washington, depending on if they play him at center. But I think those three especially are going to take a sizable hit.
Yeah. And I actually had Terry Rozier on my fantasy team last season. And even though his counting stats are pretty good at 18, 4, and 4, he still wasn't that useful because he gets no blocks. His steals are low. His field goals are pretty low. So he really only benefits in those three categories. And even those three cats aren't super outstanding to begin with. And it's just one of those things now that his role is going to diminish because Gordon Hayward is getting paid like a number one option. So we'll see what that happens. And then as we touched on, LaMelo is kind of being handed the keys here. So his play is going to go down a lot. I think out of the two of him or Devonte Graham, it could go either way. It's flip a coin, but I think he'd probably take the bench role. But it could go 50-50. And that's why with Devonte Graham, exact same situation. I think because he stretches the floor a bit better for LaMelo to work with, that's might be what the coach goes with. But I mean, look, you don't know at this point. So it's just a gamble. And I don't like a whole lot of uncertainty in players that aren't as super beneficial to begin with.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And they're both like usage kind of players. They rely on having the ball in their hands to produce their stats. So I think, because the fact that they're going to take a sizable hit in that, that's going to knock them back. So for example, someone like Terry Rozier is ranked 123. Look, I think that's fine. That's pretty fair. On Yahoo, 123. I'll just check Graham here now.
He's 93. That's where he's
93. Ranked. Yeah, look, I'd probably say they're both pretty accurate. I think in our winners video, we talked about Marcus Smart as the 94th ranked player. I definitely know who I'm taking over Marcus Smart or Devonte Graham. Check that video if you're not too sure. But I think these guys are going to take a big hit, and I probably won't be drafting either of them in my fantasy drafts. And also Miles Bridges, who we should touch on, who was in and out of fantasy rosters last year. He was sort of maybe a breakout guy last year. I started with him on my team, ended up dropping him. I don't think that he's going to be a draftable player this year because Gordon Hayward's going to come in there and just command that wing spot that Miles had last season. So,
it's a bit of a fly. Like maybe he does get the starting power forward role, but you don't really know. And regardless, his usage will go down. And as you said, he wasn't that flashy to begin with. So
So similar story with our loser number 2, and that is I've highlighted Gallinari here, but also just the Atlanta Hawks in general. I think, look, they've made tremendous moves, and I think they're going to be a better team for it. But from a fantasy point of view, it's going to affect everyone's stats. And I think, look, Trae Young will probably survive it the best. But I still think even maybe a minor hit to him because he relies so much on having the ball in his hands so much. They brought in players like Rondo, even someone like a Khris Dunn, Gallinari, Bogdanovic. They've drafted Okongwu, who I think is a good player, so it'll affect the big guys. They're just a more competent team, and there's more mouths to feed on this team. So I think as a result, they'll all sort of diminish a little bit. And Jermaine's pick of John Collins in the first round, I hated it at the time, and I hate it even more now. So I think, he's definitely a sort of end of the second round kind of pick for me personally.
Yeah, I agree. The thing I'll say about the Hawks is it's really the only reliable player I think is your Trae Young, just because he's been handed the keys. Everyone else is a bit of a question mark at this point, and I think they're a great team now. It's just because they're so deep, and you don't really know what direction the coach would take him, because there's a lot of young players there as well. You don't know what's he going to do with Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, and then there's a player like Rondo who's an injury concern anyway, and then John Collins is now stuck in the front court with Clint Capella, so his usage is going to go down. It's a weird roster. The only safe bet is Trae Young. Everyone else, I'd be a little bit hesitant on. And as you said, Gallinari would also fall in that category.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously the reason I highlight Gallinari is because he gets his value from points, threes, and free throw percentage. And That's it, basically. Maybe a small trickle of rebounds in there as well. So he's obviously moving to the 3, so those rebounds are going to drop. He's going to have the ball in his hands less, so those free throws attempts are going to drop. And, of course, his points are going to drop as well. So I can see him actually sliding a fair way down. Trae Young, I still think he's a first rounder. Bogdan Bogdanovic is an interesting one because obviously he was coming off the bench a fair bit in Sacramento. So he actually might have similar value and may even come up. So he is one to keep an eye on. He may not lump into this group, but the rest of them I can see taking a minor on the Collins and Capella side to a major on the Gallinari side in terms of fantasy value. So yeah, just be aware of that increased volume of mouths to feed in Hawks. Let's move on to another one. This one's a bit more unclear. At number 3, I've got a combination of Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson. Now, the reason I say this because on our rookie video, we talked about Obi Toppin, and you were pretty high on Obi Toppin. You thought he was going to get the keys and get some minutes. That you would think means that one or both of these guys are going to see a decrease in their minutes. How do you see this playing out?
I mean, it's one of those question marks, isn't it? And I'm high on Obi. I think Obi will perform. The only thing is who does the coach really? Who does coach want to throw in there? So
yeah.
Mitchell Robinson has never really been able to play many minutes, regardless, just because of his
foul trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though he had a record-breaking field goal season, beat Wilt Chamberlain in field goal percentage.
Did he really? 74%. Yeah, true.
Best of all time.
Wow.
It still wasn't on a whole lot of attempts because he couldn't stay on the freaking court.
Yeah.
So the only real positive he really brought was kind of like, I guess it was the field goal, but it wasn't a huge, there wasn't a whole lot of attempts, which didn't help you out a whole lot. And then the blocks were there, but he just wasn't super positive to begin with. And I don't see that changing a whole lot. And then in terms of that, you got Obi. Is Julius Randle going to be in the trade market? Maybe.
Yeah.
He's got a big contract. So it's one of those things. His advanced stats are really bad. So maybe Tom Tibbs would be like, no, I don't want to do Julius Randle. We'll go Obi Toppin. It's a bit of a shit show. I don't know what's happening. I'm very hesitant to take either of them.
Yeah, there's red flags all over the place. Like it's the Knicks. Like it's like just hard to get a handle on it. Like, look, what they should do is they should play, in my opinion, they should give the bulk of the minutes to Robinson and Toppin and just play the young guys. But whether or not they do that, I know Tibbs is a defense guy, so maybe he likes Robinson, but then maybe he doesn't like Toppin. So these guys might be unaffected. But like you said, it's just the unknown factor. Look, Mitch Robinson is ranked 47th, and I just would not be comfortable drafting him at that point. The other thing that concerns me about him is just the fact that his value is concentrated so highly in such few categories. One game, he'll play 8 minutes and give you like 6 points and 2 rebounds and do nothing else. And the next game, he'll have 6 blocks, and win you the week in that category. But it's just so up and down and so unpredictable that he's a frustrating player to own. And if I can get my blocks elsewhere, I will be looking to do so.
I honestly hated him. I had him on my team last season. I hated it. I only drafted him because he slid. For some reason, you might have to fact check me, but he was like a top 20 pick, apparently.
He was ranked. Yeah, he was ranked number 20 last year. None of the players in our draft bought it, and he slid, I think, right until I think it was like the 80th pick or something like that.
So it got to a point where like he just fell to me around like the 80th pick, and I thought to myself, well, apparently he's got top 20 value according to Yahoo. So
yeah.
And there's a lot of professionals apparently that put that list together. So I might as well take him. And look, he only really gave me blocks. Like the 3 field goal it just wasn't enough to amount to really anything. Obviously great on turnovers as well, but that's because he played fuck all minutes. So
yeah. So look, he's a boom in 3 categories. Like he does give you 7 rebounds in 23 minutes. Look, if he was to play 32 minutes, this guy would be amazing. But my confidence in him getting there are just. I'll believe it when I see it, and I think at pick 47, it's too much high. Risk. Yeah, too much risk to pick him.
Where would you be? Would you draft him at 80 like last year in our draft, or where would you be looking to pick him?
Again, it would depend on my build. If I'm in need of blocks and I don't mind losing a bit of free throw percentage, I'm pretty happy with my points. Then yeah, I would. But again, it's one of those really situational type of picks that I would have to be pretty desperate for blocks to want to pick him. But yeah, I think at 80, yeah, I think it's a good swing. It's a high upside pick at that point. Let's move on to the next one. We'll move on to another number 4 loser of free agency, and that is Ricki Rubio, who has obviously landed himself in Minnesota. And this Minnesota backcourt has actually gotten pretty crowded in this offseason. They obviously drafted number 1 pick Anthony Edwards. They've got D'Angelo Russell there, who they traded for last season. Malik Beasley got a big contract. There's, again, a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of players who want the ball in their hands. Ricki Rubio is now 30, which sounds weird to say, but he's 30 years old now. So I think I can see him sliding down fairly far. What are your thoughts on Ricki Rubio?
Yeah, I think I'm looking at his rank right now, 61. I think that's way too high. That's
I wouldn't be
his high assists, and there's no way he's going to average. I don't see him averaging 8.8 assists again. Like, surely that's going to go down.
I don't think so.
Whether he starts, I think, is a bit of a question mark as well. I can understand, like, offensively, he actually might be able to fit with their starting point guard and D'Angelo Russell, but I don't know. I think it's just a weird kind of pick. Surely his usage will go down. Like, it has to go down. So he's definitely a loser. Worst case scenario for him is he ends up being a bit of a bench role, and he only plays about 20 minutes a game. And if that's happening, then there's no real reason to pick him up unless D'Angelo Russell goes down with an injury. So you could keep him on your kind of watch list for injuries, because he put up stats if that happens. But yeah, I'd be very hesitant to pick him. He'd be kind of like a waiver on one of my last picks. I'm towards like the 130 kind of range for me.
Okay. I think I'm a little higher than that. Just at this stage, the way I see it going, I think they'll put Rubio at the 1, D'Angelo Russell at the 2, and they might even slide Edwards to the 3, is what I'm guessing they'll do, if the rumors are true that Edwards is now 6'6", which could be false. So I could see that happening and him still playing maybe like 26 to 28 minutes, which would give him enough value on his steals and assists alone. But yeah, definitely a loser. I definitely think he's going to drop. Last year, he was ranked 47th overall on a punt turnover build. So look, at 61, yeah, I probably wouldn't want to pick him there. I probably wanted to pick him close to the 100 mark. But if you were to see signs of him coming off the bench, yeah, abort. You're sort of backing off, and he's purely, he's purely an assist streamer at that point. So it could go bad for Ricki Rubio real quick.
Yeah.
All right. Last one that we'll go into a depth is Robert Covington as a big loser, obviously going over to the Portland Trailblazers. Now, he's not really a high usage player, you could say, so you could think that he might fit in, but the way I see it, the Houston Rockets were a perfect fit for a player like Bob Cove. Like, lots of threes, lots of steals, and actually for a wing player, lots of blocks and lots of rebounds for that small ball lineup that they were running. Obviously, they didn't have a center on the team for half the season, so he was playing really close to the rim, getting lots of blocks, getting lots of rebounds. So I see that dropping fairly significantly this year. He's obviously on a team that has a few more weapons around them, so maybe his three-point attempts goes down, and his points maybe drop as well. And potentially also rebounds dropping as well. So someone who I am pretty down on. What are your thoughts on Bob Cove?
Look, I'm happy you brought him up, and this is why we have these discussions. Everyone has their own opinion, obviously, and I think I'm actually a bit high on Covington.
Okay,
I'm high on Covington, so I reckon right now he's ranked 78. All right, there was periods where he put up kind of top I guess 30 value when he put up like the steals and the blocks together with the threes, like the combination of those 3 stats. He's kind of like a Nicholas Batum flashback to like 2013, 2014 kind of thing. When you do those 3 counting stats, they're so valuable with the low turnovers as well. So those 4 categories are actually like really big assets. And I understand that, look, his rebounds will go down because he's no longer like a starting center. But I still feel like he's going to get the threes to throw up. He only averaged 10 field goals a game last season. There's every chance he could put up like 12 points a game on that Trailblazers team. And I still think his steals and blocks, he was putting up similar stats when he was in Philly. and that's with like a Joel Embiid with bigger players. He's a help defender. That's how he gets those stats. I still think pile him up. I'm high on Covington, so it's one we disagree on.
There you go. Well, so he was ranked 44 last season. Do you see him being around the same kind of range?
Yeah, look, I think he'd slot into that. Yeah, I reckon he'd slot right back in.
Okay.
So I'd be looking to, I guess at this point it's a reach, but my advice would be to reach for him. Your advice is to stay away from him.
Well, I'm not saying stay away. I'm not saying stay away. Like if with his rank at 78, I don't mind drafting him around that point. But I don't want to draft him at his last year's value of 44 in that top 50 zone. I think that's his ceiling, and I don't want to draft a player at his ceiling who could potentially drop off a fair bit. So that would be my advice is if you can, wait for him. If he drops you, if he doesn't, if someone like yourself reaches on him, then so what? That's all good. They can have him. You move on to someone else who can get you some steals, maybe like a Marcus Smart later in the draft. So, yeah, look, not someone who I absolutely hate, but I think in this loser category, in my opinion, he's there. But I do see the argument, and someone who, if he did come out and get 2 steals and hit 2.5 threes, would still be a highly ranked player. So last couple, I'll just run through them again real quick. Blake Griffin, who's obviously the team's brought in 20 big guys. Derrick Favors is another big loser going to a bench role. Khris Dunn, who was an elite steal guy last year, will be struggling to get minutes. Luke Kennard, who's gone from Detroit, who put up a lot of points last year. And Marc Gasol, who was that 3-point assists, good free throw percentage big guy who's now going to be playing a minor role in the Lakers. Which one of those guys stand out to you the most?
Look, I'll say stay away from Blake Griffin. Do not draft Blake Griffin. He is ranked 83rd. I don't know what is going on with him. He has had injury concerns for years now. When he came back from that last injury, he looked terrible. Do not draft Blake Griffin. The next thing I'll say is, look, Khris Dunn, I guess I'll probably touch on as well. Khris Dunn was a starting small forward for a very bad team. And now he's going to be a bench role, I guess. He's just going to be a specialist defender, and in my eyes, he's kind of like an example might be like a Torrey Craig for the Nuggets. He's going to come on, be a specialist. He's not a fantasy guy to own anymore, sadly.
Yeah, his fantasy days are behind him. Yeah, I agree with you with Blake Griffin. Look, if he's there with my last pick or my second last pick, I'll take a swing. I'll see how I go, and if he shit, I'll just drop him. It's all good. That's what those last sort of picks are for, but. Yeah, look, it doesn't seem like he's going to be the same player that he was prior to all these injuries. Look, he shot 35% last year. Like, that is absolutely awful.
Small sample size, though. Like, it was just injuries. And he came back from an injury, and then they're like, oh, no, he's just not 100%. And so it's so bad.
I just don't think it's in this team's best interest to play this guy. I think you'd much rather play someone like a Jeremy Grant or some of those younger guys who at least have a future on this team outside of, just wasting all their money. So, I'm agreeing with you. Do not draft Blake Griffin unless it's a late round flyer. Alrighty, guys. Well, that's it for today's podcast. If you are listening along on YouTube, please subscribe. We've got lots of fantasy content coming out. If you can hit the like button on the video as well, it would be much appreciated. And stay tuned for more fantasy content coming at you. Thank you. Bye.